As Jim Long was talking about phone numbers that he has memorized, I have 3 phone numbers memorized. Mine, my wife's. Now the third one is my father-in-law. Because once upon a time, my wife was not my wife. And I had to call that phone number to talk to my girlfriend. And he's had that phone number ever since. 20 years now, something like that? 3 phone numbers. I might be able to get North Garland's phone number if I really thought about it. I know it has numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But the order is kind of hazy in there. Go ahead and turn to Mark chapter 9. Questions and answers. Each week looking at a question that was taken from our congregation. And as I said in the class time this morning, this was one of the top 2 questions answered, or at least topics, subjects that we're dealing with. We're dealing with doubt. I'm not quite so sure about all of this thing. All of these things. This thing called faith. What if none of this is real? What if we've gotten it wrong? Do people have doubts? Does everybody have doubts? Why do I have these doubts after so many years? So we're looking at doubt. And in Mark chapter 9, there's a father that believes, but he acknowledges that he wrestles with unbelief as well. And so he tells Jesus this, and he asks for Jesus' help. In Mark chapter 9, let's start with verse 17. A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, he gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not." "You unbelieving generation," Jesus replied, "how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring me the boy." And so they brought him. And when the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled and foamed at the mouth. And Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into the fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." "If I can," Jesus said, "everything is permissible. Everything is possible for one who believes." Immediately, the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief." And when Jesus saw that the crowd was running to the scene, he rebuked the impure spirit. "You deaf and mute spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." The spirit shrieked, convulsed him violently, and came out. And the boy looked so much like a corpse that many said, "He's dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him to his feet, and he stood up. After Jesus had gone indoors, his disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" And he replied, "This kind can come out only by prayer." I appreciate the honesty of the father in this situation, the honesty and the openness. He says, "I believe." But then he confesses right after that, "But help me with my unbelief." We see those 2 wrestling and pulling, and that essentially is the question that we're looking at today. I believe, but sometimes within me, I have questions, I have doubts. Help me with my unbelief. So one of the things that we talked about in our class this morning was that I believe that doubt and faith go together. If we do not believe in something at all, we don't doubt it. But we only doubt things that we really have a faith in of some kind. And so I would say use our doubt as a springboard to deeper faith. And as we look at some people in the Bible, in the Scriptures, I think we have a tendency, and it's maybe just because the Bible is a book, that sometimes we call these Bible people characters. And we almost talk about them as they're somebody's creation, as we might talk about, Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore and Piglet. They were created out of somebody's mind, or the characters in Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. And sometimes we talk about those people and we say, I really like that character, the confidence that character has, and I wish I could have the confidence like that. And we view Bible people as these characters, these kind of superheroes. But I read a quote this week, and it said, there are no Bible characters, just people, like you and me, who happened to be standing around when the Bible was written. I think maybe there's a little bit more to they just happen to be standing around, but the sentiment is true. They are normal people, just like you and just like me. And when we really delve into them, we find that they had questions and doubts, just like we do sometimes. And they made goof-ups, just like we do sometimes. Only hopefully, ours do not get recorded for eternity. You ever watch the news and they're interviewing somebody on the street, and you think, could they have got anybody worse to interview? And it's even worse when, it's some event that happened in California, and they're asking people, where are you from? I'm from Oklahoma. And you're like, oh no. Please don't judge us all based on this. Sometimes I feel like that. Please, when I have those moments when I really mess up, please just don't judge me all by that one moment in there. We're going to look at one of these Bible heroes today. A Bible hero who is actually called the father of everyone who believes, the father of faith. Turn to Hebrews chapter 11. And let's read about Abraham. In Hebrews 11, this is kind of the hall of fame of people who have had faith. And it lists name after name, person after person from the Old Testament scriptures of people who had faith. And the wonderful things about this is it's kind of like at people's funerals. We tell all the good things that those people did, and we just, we might slightly mention some of the other, but we tend to avoid the bad things. Man, Brother Bob, he was a good guy. He was a good father. He did get arrested a couple times, but we leave those things out. When we read about Abraham here, it kind of reads like that. So let's start in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. We'll read 1 through 3, and then we'll go to verse 8. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. Verse 8, by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place where he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with a foundation, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and as good as dead, came to descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. Verse 17, by faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God said to him, it's through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead, and so in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from the dead. So here's Abraham, the father of all who have faith, who just, when God said get up and move, he just got up and moved like a bold man moving into the wild blue yonder. And even though he was a really old man, he just trusted that God would give him children. And when he was tested to offer his son, he just did it without a second thought. I hope you detect the sarcasm in my voice. Because now we're going to go back to the account in Genesis, and we're going to pick out just a few verses that maybe don't often stand out to us. So turn to Genesis chapter 12. And let's read about this perfect man of faith. And we'll see that maybe he was a human, just like you and me, who did things that weren't quite so noble as we would hope them to be. The first one we have is in Genesis chapter 12. God comes and talks to Abraham. His name is not Abraham at the time. It's just Abram. He hasn't changed it yet. And so God comes to him. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, leave your people and your father's household into the land that I will show you. I'll make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. Whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abraham went as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot. And it continues on from there. So Abraham was told, go, leave all of your family, all of your father's household, and come to this foreign land. Abraham took his wife Sarai and who? His nephew Lot. Leave your family and go. Now, we include Sarah in his family. But he takes along Lot with him. And so one of the very first things that God tells him to do, Abraham does mostly. But he takes some family along with him. And isn't it interesting that who ends up causing a lot of problems for Abraham? Lot. Why? Because, Lot's flock of sheep grows huge, and Abraham's flock of sheep grows huge. And then their servants start bickering about whose sheep are going to eat, whose places, and who's going to, just too big, and so it causes a problem. So Abraham says, fine, okay, you know what? Lot, here, which way do you want to go? You want that land, or you want this land? He lets Lot choose, and Lot goes. Lot goes. Well, a few years go by, and Lot decides to make his home in Sodom and Gomorrah. The story goes that some people come and they attack that area and they take Lot and all of his family captive. And who has to go rescue them? Abraham has to go and rescue. And we all know the end of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, that God destroys it with fire and hail and brimstone because of the great sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. Isn't it interesting that God said, just you, come with your family and go here. And yet Lot brings other people with him, and that causes problems with him. The second thing that happens is, this is just a few verses later. To put this delicately, we'll just say that Abraham loans his wife out. In chapter 12, verse 10, there was famine, and so they go down to Egypt. And in verse 11, as he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarah, "I know what a beautiful woman you are." And Sarah went, "Oh, you're the best husband in the world, Abraham. The Egyptians are going to see that you're beautiful, and they'll think this is his wife, and they'll kill me. But they'll let you live. So say that you're my sister. Abraham, Do you see how oh, you're so wonderful and beautiful, and then they're going to kill me. So just tell them that you're my sister. That's a wonderful husband there. Say that you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared. And when Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarah was very beautiful. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into the palace. And he treated Abram well for his sake. And Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys and servants and camels. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his whole household because of Abram's wife Sarah. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. "Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister so that I took her to be my wife? Now, here's your wife. Take her. Go." And Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way and his wife and everything that he had. Abraham, man of faith, or Abraham, man of fear? That sounds a lot to me like Abraham, man of fear. Let's continue. Genesis chapter 16. Genesis 16, verses 1 through 7. Another not so great and wonderful moment. God has promised to make Abraham's family great, as numerous as the sands on the sea and the stars in the sky. There's only one problem. They're really old. It doesn't take a lot for people to draw conclusions that, well, guess what? I'm not having any children. I'm 90 years old. Back then and now. And so they get together, Abraham, this man of faith in God, and Sarah, who has faith in God as well, and they say, you know what? We got this. Abraham, how about you, here's my servant, and you can have children. And Abraham, this man of faith, says, you're right. That works. Let's do that. And they do. Does this sound like a man of faith who is trusting on God throughout all things? Or does this sound like a man who's trying to do things his own way? We continue on. Abraham, in chapter 17, verses 16 through 17, again talking about the children that he's going to have. God also said to Abraham, as for Sarah, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai, but name her Sarah. I will bless her, and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. King of peoples will come to her. Abraham fell face down. He laughed. And he said to himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? Who often gets the raw end of the deal when talking about they laughed? Sarah. Because 3 men come and they say, at this time next year, Sarah will have a child. And she's over in the tent, and she's listening, and she hears it, and she laughs. And they say, why'd she laugh? And they name him Isaac and laughter. And who was the first one to laugh, though? Abraham. Guess what, 100-year-old Abraham? You're going to have a child. Now, maybe he deserves some credit for laughing and not just falling over. Well, I'll take that back. He did fall over on his face, didn't he? You're going to have a child. Abraham, man of faith, is the person who doesn't leave all of his family there. He brings his nephew along, even though God said lead him. Abraham, man of faith, is the one who tells his wife to lie and tell the Pharaoh that she is his sister. By the way, he does this twice. Abraham, man of faith, laughs at God. Abraham, man of faith, or Abraham, a man who might have had a few doubts. What I want us to see is that Abraham is this upstanding character, a man of great faith, and he did have faith. Okay, I don't want us to lose that. He did have faith, and he was to be commended. But let's not forget that he was a man just like you and I, and that doubts came along his way. And when he's going into Egypt, all of a sudden he realizes that there's a really good chance that people will kill him. He doesn't turn to God. He turns to his human ways of thinking. I want us to spend the rest of our sermon time this morning looking at some ways that can be beneficial to us in strengthening our faith. Keep in mind that this is not a mathematical formula about how to get rid of all doubt, but these are some things that have helped a great many people in their faith. So let's look at these. Steps that help. First one, decide whether or not you're going to believe. Make a choice. Are you going to be a person who believes? Or are you going to be a person who turns away? There are so many things in life that require a decision. I am going to mentally make the choice to, and then you fill in the blank. Because there's two parts to it, our heart part and our head part. And they go together well when things are wonderful. And so we talk about, loving our spouse. Oh, and we're madly in love. It's easy to love someone. But then when you wake up with bad breath, maybe it's a little bit harder. But you say, I have the choice. I made the choice. And as years go by and suddenly you find yourself maybe helping out medically with your spouse that you never imagined. And it's not easy. But you made the choice. You said, for better or worse, for richer and poor, in sickness and in health. And you made the choice and you do it out of love. It's not easy to follow God. And there are times when it gets hard, but we made the choice to follow God. And so when Joshua, at the end of his life, comes and he stands before the Israelites at the end of his life, and he says to them, choose today, who are you going to serve? Are you going to serve some of these other gods of stone and wood that really don't exist? Or are you going to serve God? He says, choose which one. Make the decision now. And remind yourself constantly that you made that choice. And so when we have doubt creep into our life, make the choice to be a person of faith. The second one, go to where faith is nourished. There's an account in Kings where Elijah comes before several prophets of Baal. And he makes this challenge. He says, you set up an altar and I'll set up an altar. You pray to your God and I'll pray to my God. You put the burnt offering, or you put the offering and I'll put the offering. And we'll see which one of our gods answers by sending fire to consume this. And so the prophets of Baal gather around and they get their thing and they dance around and they're praying to their God and they're singing to him and does he answer? No, because he doesn't exist. Baal doesn't exist. And so Elijah starts making fun of him. Where is he? Is he asleep? Maybe he's on vacation. And so they start cutting themselves. The prophets of Baal start cutting themselves to get their God's attention. He'll see that we're hurting ourselves and then I'll wake him up. And nothing happens. And so then Elijah comes and he says a simple prayer. He covers this thing in water. He says a simple prayer and he asks God to come. And this fire falls down and consumes it and burns the sacrifice and the altar and the water and everything. They both had faith. But you have to go to where it is nourished, what is true, what is real. There was a lady who moved with her family to Alberta, Canada. Her family was from there, or her husband was from there, and the husband puts it this way, and he says, if there's one thing that people from Alberta know, it's ice. We know ice. And so we went with our family, and we were going to ice skate on this lake out there, frozen lake. And we got out there, and my wife was terrified. The ice was going to break. We were all going to fall through. And we said, no, it's frozen. It's solid. This is okay. It's safe. We did this all the time growing up. And she could hear it creaking and cracking and groaning. And he says, people know that that's normal. And she wouldn't let us do it until an airplane came along and landed on the frozen lake. And then a truck drove across the frozen lake to the airplane, got the passengers, and drove back. And he says, after that, she had a little bit more faith in the frozen ice. And they went ice skating. And he says, it doesn't take a lot of faith for frozen ice to carry you, for nice, thick, frozen ice. You can have just a little bit of faith, and you'll stand firm. But you can have a lot of faith in thin ice, and it will still crack. Who are we going to put our faith in? Something that isn't real, or in the true God? We have to go to where faith is nourished. We have to clarify the object of one's faith. What are we putting our faith in? Are we putting our faith in ourselves? Or are we putting our faith in God? Are we putting our faith in something that is not real? Or are we putting it in something that is real? And then finally, we need to feed one's mind with faith-building material. We have this phrase, finish it, garbage in, garbage. And we understand what that means. The information that we put in our minds, the things that we listen to, that we watch, that we observe, what goes in is what is going to come out. And so Matthew talks about out of the depths of the heart, the tongue speaks. What we put in here takes hold and comes out. And if we fill our mind with the doubts, then we're going to doubt. So what happens a lot of times is a person all of a sudden will think, well, I have doubts. Maybe these doubts are real. And then they will spend all of their time researching reasons why God doesn't exist. And there's a lot of evidence out there that would say that maybe God doesn't exist. And if that is all that we consume, the logical place to end up is that I don't believe in God anymore. But if we are people who will feed our mind with truth, there is a lot of evidence, not proofs, evidence that points to the existence of God. And if that is what we fill our minds in, there's a lot of answers to be had to the questions that we have. So I want to finish up with just a couple thoughts here. Faith may have doubt, but faith never gives up. Faith at its heart is a commitment, a decision of the will and of the mind. I will choose to have faith, and I will feed that. There are hundreds of examples of people who have had doubts, and I have never talked to anybody who said, well, I just really don't want to believe. I've never met anybody who's asking questions who says, I just don't want to, and so Most people say exactly like the man in Mark. I believe. Help me with my unbelief. And I want to say there's a big difference between a person who has doubt, a doubter, and an unbeliever. There's a big difference between a doubter and an unbeliever. An unbeliever is a person who has consciously or subconsciously made a decision not to believe. I will not believe, and I will not listen to any evidence, and I will push that as far away from me as I can because I choose not to believe. A doubter is a person who is wrestling with faith, which means that they do have faith. But maybe there's a pebble in their shoes that's causing problems. Or maybe there's a big boulder that they're trying to find their way around. Faith never gives up. And so today, I kind of wrestled with how do I end this sermon. I wish that there was a way where I could say certain things and it would just chase all doubt away. I'm not the person that has those things to say, and I really don't even think that those things exist. But I do know that there is evidence out there that points to the existence of God. And so I encourage you, and myself, when we have those times of doubt, that we will seek answers. Maybe we'll find some answers in the biblical word. Maybe we'll find answers in historical evidence. Maybe we'll find answers by talking with somebody who has strong faith and can come alongside us and encourage us. There's a lot of different ways to nurture that faith. And so I simply want to end by just saying, seek out faith. Go to places of faith. Go to places that feed faith and find people that feed your faith, that encourage you. And so some of the questions that we had were, does everybody have doubt? And we kind of did this little show of hands in class, and virtually everybody raised their hands. And so do Christians have doubt? Yes, we do. But also everybody pretty much said that they've made it through times of doubt as well. And there are seasons that doubt may come and go. I'm confident that when we seek the truth will be found. And I was reminded of when Jesus stood before Pilate, and they had this going back and forth, and Jesus was answering Pilate's questions, and Pilate was asking him questions. And Pilate eventually says, kind of throws his hand up in the air, and he makes this comment. He says, "Oh, what is truth?" And it's ironic that Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," was standing there right in front of Pilate. But Pilate was choosing a different way. What is truth? So the thing I can't stand before you today and say, there is truth. And the truth can be found. Let's pray. Father God, I want to say in this prayer exactly what the Father said in Mark 9. We believe. But God, help us with our unbelief. Those moments, sometimes whether they are fleeting or they are long-lasting, whether they are simple questions or deep, profound theological questions. Questions that may have simple answers or questions that we may never know until we see you face to face. God, help us with our unbelief. We pray this in Jesus' name, and all together the church says, amen. We're going to stand and sing a song now. If somebody wants to come forward and be prayed for, please do that. We have elders that will come down to the front. If somebody wants to put their faith in God today in baptism, please do that. Let's stand together. Glenn.